Hey everybody, Dan here with Pain Free You. Got a gorgeous day, early afternoon. It's about 30 degrees out, but I figured I'd come out, get a little sunshine on my face, enjoy the crisp winter air. Today's topic is going to be, the goal is not to ignore the pain or symptoms. So I'll get to that in a minute. I'm going to actually enjoy some sunshine on my face. Breathe in the cool air. Exhale out all the indoor stale air. Breathe in the nature. Exhale the indoor living, which I do way too much of in the winter. Loving the feel of that sun. If you can, get outside. Even if you got to bundle up. If it's a sunny day, get some of that sun on your face. Get that natural light. All right. So the goal, when you're dealing with chronic pain or chronic symptoms, the goal is not to ignore the pain. And I do see that word, ignore, all the time. Not just in my community, but in the other TMS groups, and a lot of comments, a lot of messages, even in coaching calls, people say, yeah, I'm trying to ignore the pain. I just really want to make this very clear that ignoring the pain is impossible. You can't ignore it. You're gonna notice it. Pain or other symptoms are designed to get our attention. So you can't ignore it. It's literally not possible. Right? That's literally like saying, la 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 la, I'm not listening. And when you try to ignore it, let me ask you, do you believe that your brain's going to interpret that as that you're safe? Or that you're acting like this thing isn't happening so that you can kind of trick yourself, which might be perceived by your hypervigilant, sensitive brain as danger. Well, I'm trying to ignore that. Well, think of it in social relationships. If somebody's trying to ignore you, it's because they're upset with you and they're trying not to engage with you in any way, shape, or form. So if you're trying to ignore your pain, it's usually based on a message of frustration and fear, like, I just want to get rid of that, I'm going to ignore it. So I don't think ignoring is the right approach. You will notice the symptoms, the sensations, so don't even try to ignore it. What I encourage is for us to just simply acknowledge it, notice it, but don't make it a big deal. Don't react with frustration, fear, anger, sadness. Oh my God, I'm never going to get better. Right? Because all that's doing is conveying to your brain that these sensations are dangerous. But if we go back to square one, Sarno, he said that the body's already okay. Anything you see on the imaging studies are normal abnormalities. And in many cases, probably the vast majority of cases, any medical label you've been given as the reason for your symptoms are just that, medical labels. There's no hard proof that the pain you are suffering is coming from this thing the doctor says. Doesn't matter if it's a medical label like neuralgia, neuropathy, pelvic floor dysfunction, rotator cuff this, meniscus that, right? Tendinitis, carpal tunnel, herniated disc, bulging disc. When a doctor tells you, oh, yep, that's the problem, we got to do surgery, ask him or her, are there ever any cases where people have the same physiology and no pain? And if they're an honest doctor, they're going to say, yeah, that can happen. Then ask them again. So what's the evidence, the hard proof that what you're telling me is causing the pain is actually causing the pain? What we're trying to do there is poke some holes in the medical story, right? I believe anything chronic, long-term, longer than normal healing time frames, Anything persistent, longer than that, is TMS. And TMS is a very overused word because a lot of people say, well, is this TMS? Is that TMS? Is mental health? Is you name it? Is everything TMS? Well, if you view it under the standpoint of too much stress, too much danger, then yeah, most things are TMS. Anything chronic or persistent is most likely a mind-body process where the brain is deciding to turn on symptoms like pain or other sensations in your body as a protection mechanism. And now there are some other aspects where too much stress, fight or flight, can absolutely affect the autonomic nervous system, right? Meaning like digestion, immunity. But the approach that I take of teaching the brain we're safe will absolutely help that, because when you teach your brain you're safe, you're not going to be in fight or flight as often, which means your immunity and digestive systems are going to return to balance as opposed to stay in a suppressed, non-optimal state. So this stuff really isn't as complicated as we make it out to be. Don't try to ignore the pain. I often say be indifferent to it. Now, a lot of people will say, well, I can't be indifferent. It hurts too much, too uncomfortable. I'm too scared. Well, again, go back to the beginning. If you have the accurate knowledge of what this mind-body perceived danger, pain, or symptoms are, and you've done the assessments and connected the dots and says, yeah, that totally makes sense for me, and I've seen evidence of that fact, then I'll encourage you to accept that accurate knowledge as fact. Make a decision that that's okay. This is yesterday's video. Make a decision that that's what's going on so that your brain can form a belief and back up that belief by scanning for evidence all the time. Right? That is the, what is it called? Reticular activating system, the RAS. So I feel like I'm saying some of the same things over and over again, but I'm trying to tackle them from different angles. Hopefully you guys are finding value in that, in the way I describe things. Try to break it down, make it simple. But at the end of the day, if you're walking around trying to ignore your pain, that may just lead to more frustration because you won't be able to. And then when you're not able to ignore the pain, you're going to judge yourself as doing this wrong because I can't ignore the pain. How am I ever going to get better because I can't ignore it? Don't try. Just acknowledge it. Don't freak out. And then you jump into the ability to calmly reassure yourself because you have the accurate knowledge which you are utilizing to dial down the fear. And once you have dialed down the fear, you're going to be able to shift your attention back to living life. This is the formula, folks. It's the formula. So don't try to ignore the pain. You can indifference it if you want, meaning this. Oh, there it is. So what? Don't care. Been there, done that, got the t-shirt, right? You don't have to react to the symptoms, and it's much easier not to react and just to respond calmly when you've got the accurate knowledge and you've made the decision that the accurate knowledge applies to you. Hope that makes sense. So I'm going to wrap this up, put my cold hand that's holding the camera in my pocket, and I'm going to sit out here in the sun for a few minutes and enjoy the nature. Hopefully you get outside and get some sunshine, or at least some, fresh air. And let me know what you think about this. Have you been the type who has been trying to ignore your pain? And how successful have you been at ignoring it? Were you just making believe it didn't exist? And did that effort cause more frustration for you? And more judgment that you're doing it wrong because you can't ignore it? Keep in mind, I never said ignore the pain. I've said indifference quite a number of times, but I never said ignore, and they are two very specific things. Ignore is acting like something's not there. Indifference is noticing it, but not caring. So, love you guys and gals. I will see you tomorrow.